Welcome everybody to Homeless in San Diego. My name is Greg Angel, and I am here with our guest today, Katie Holden. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So first off, congratulations are in order. You just graduated with your, well, I don't want to get the term incorrect. So tell me what you just graduated with.
So I graduated with my doctorate in occupational therapy.
Doctorate in Occupational Therapy from the University of Saint Augustine. Based out of San Marcos, just nearby. And Interfaith has been so fortunate to have a longstanding partnership with the university, and for occupational therapy interns at the master's and doctoral levels to support our clients throughout pretty much all of our programs. And Katie, last year in the fall, you worked as an intern at our Turk Recuperative Care Center. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And how long were you there as an intern?
So because of school, the fieldwork assignment is only 3 months long. So I was only there for 3 months.
Pretty quick, but you made a big impact during that time. And one of the reasons that I'm super excited to have you on the show today is that you did a study on something that I think a lot of our listeners are going to be really interested in. So can you share a little bit about what the focus of your capstone project was?
Yeah, so I did some research on what it's like to be a pet owner while you're experiencing homelessness. But there hasn't been a study done at a transitional housing site about that topic. And so I ended up interviewing 6 former and current dog owners that were formerly homeless but receiving services for shelter at a local site.
And were they all at our Turk Recuperative Care Center, or were they at different types of locations?
They were at the Turk Center.
Okay. And so I'm fascinated, and I know our listeners really want to learn more about what you discovered in this study. Before we jump into that, I imagine that some people aren't familiar with occupational therapy and what that is and what that entails. So can you share a little bit about occupational therapy?
So occupational therapy, occupation is anything that occupies your time.
Okay.
So in different settings, we work on different occupations. So in the setting where it's a community mental health setting, you're working with people with trauma from being homeless. You're also working with people with substance use disorders, and you're working with people that may have psychiatric disorders. So some of the things we work on are like applying for unemployment, applying for Social Security benefits, as well as like developing leisure activities to help moderate their emotions, to help give them meaning in life and stuff. So we did a lot of arts and crafts. And also I did something called sensory repatterning, where you work with people and help them regulate their emotions by activating their senses.
Okay. And sensory repatterning.
Oh my God, I think I got it wrong. Sensory processing is what we're working on.
Sensory processing. My bad. I think I'm the one who did
No,
that.
I think I said it wrong.
Sensory processing, and you were able to bring that as a service to support the residents at the Turk Center.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the Turk Center and your work there, but before we do that, what led you, Katie, to want to do this as a profession, to get your doctorate in occupational therapy?
So it's kind of like a long story. I was a massage therapist for a long time, and then my mom ended up getting cancer, and she was ill for a while, and she received occupational therapy after having cancer and a stroke. And I did some research about it, and it was really interesting to me over something like physical therapy, in that you work in many different settings, because you can work with kids or older adults, you can work in a hospital, you can work in an outpatient clinic. So with all the variety that you can do with occupational therapy, I was like drawn to that more so than physical therapy. But I was looking for a graduate program because I wanted to increase my income as well as do something a little bit more meaningful than massage.
And it sounds like you certainly found it. I
Yeah.
know you made such an impact in your time at the Turk Center, the study we're going to talk about, and now that you've graduated, your future plans. I know you're studying for the big licensure exam, and what's next for you beyond that?
Well, I kind of want to work in a setting where I have a little bit of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first fieldwork setting was in a skilled nursing facility.
Okay.
So I would like to work in that setting again, as well as because I also liked working with older adults.
A lot of the residents at our Turk Recuperative Care Center are older adults. For our listeners who aren't familiar, the Turk Recuperative Care Center is a 106 bed, often called post-hospitalization recuperative care center, though these days not everybody has come out of hospital situations, though many of them have that as an experience. And the people who we serve at the Recuperative Care Center, which is in Escondido, where we're recording our show today, all have some sort of recuperative need, a physical, medical need. It could be a behavioral health need, or it often could be both. And they also have co-occurring homelessness. They don't have a safe place, a home to recover from or address those conditions. And so people come into our recuperative care center directly out of hospitals. People come directly out of homelessness. It can be coming directly off the streets. A homeless outreach team worker assesses somebody, identifies that they have a recuperative need and that they might be a fit for this program. And then we work with their Medi-Cal insurance provider to get approval to bring them into our program. Or again, going back, it could be the local hospital sending individuals to us. We also work with the VA, so we have a fair number of veterans in the program. And then because it is a larger site with 100 plus beds, we also have some longer term, although still transitional housing available for individuals. So did you get a chance, Katie, to work within kind of all these different programs and all these and a variety of types of people who were there at the Turk Center?
Yeah. So I worked with, I had like 7 or 8 people I worked with on a regular basis where we would meet like weekly or biweekly. And I worked with them for different issues, but one of the things we worked on was like developing leisure activities to help, because a lot of times boredom is a constant theme for people experiencing homelessness. And this boredom affects their quality of life because they don't really have meaning or purpose. So they're just bored all the time, and it can really affect their mental health. And so we tried to develop some leisure activities so they wouldn't be so bored all the time.
What are some activities that you worked on?
Well, so I worked with one person about developing different sensory experiences to help regulate emotions as well as help improve mental health through being connected to their body through meditation, as well as like activating their senses. I also did some like arts and crafts where people that were very visual or liked color would like just do adult coloring pages.
Mm-hmm.
Like one resident actually colored a bunch of football helmets.
Yeah.
And they decorated during the football season the nutrition center with football helmets that she had all colored in. And she worked really hard. I mean, I saw her coloring like for hours on end. Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. And each of these residents are supported with a case manager. So that's an Interfaith employee who works with them to identify what their goals are. And so everyone has some connection to homelessness, housing instability. So housing is always a goal. The program is short-term in nature. So residents at the Turk Center are there anywhere between a few weeks to a few months usually. There's variety in between. So we need to find where they're going to go after that. So the goals are always include that, but they also could include goals around employment. They could include goals around family reunification, around securing obviously an income if employment is not an option. Most of these individuals have health conditions, right? So securing disability income is always or often an area that the case manager is going to focus on with them. And then I'm just thinking about your role, Katie, as an occupational therapist, as part of an interdisciplinary team that's there at the Turk Center. We have the case manager. We then also have nursing staff who are there in particular to address and support the residents on taking control over their health and connecting with primary care if they don't have that, addressing specialty care if that's a need. And then we also, as a part of the interdisciplinary team there at the Turk Center, have mental health professionals who can provide counseling. And all of this is really meant to be short term while somebody's at the Turk Center, but to build the longer term skills and the longer term habits that will support that individual beyond. So when it comes to behavioral health, we're going to be connecting to ongoing counseling services that somebody can have after they leave the Turk Center. Now, all this sounds wonderful, and it is, but as you and I were discussing before we started, a couple months, 2-3 months, 90 days, that goes by really quick. And it can be really hard to help individuals overcome so many challenges during that time. I'm curious if that's something that you can speak to. You invested your time over a few months to do this work to help people. You're providing really important occupational therapy skills. But it can be very, very challenging when people have so many obstacles that they're trying to overcome.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we did go to meetings with case managers and learn about their current clients. And some clients, we kind of assisted the case managers in applying for these different things because we had more of an open schedule where we could go with them to doctor's visits. We could go with them to the Social Security office. So we could help assist more in certain areas just because we had a little bit of a freer schedule than the case managers.
Yeah.
So we definitely worked with them. But it was challenging because, well, first off, we're only there for 3 months.
Yeah.
So we finally build relationships with people, and then they trust us and they are willing to work with us, and then we're gone. And then there's a break where there's because of school, there's not an intern at that site that does occupational therapy.
Over winter break.
Yeah.
In between
semesters. So we couldn't pass our client off to a person.
Yeah, that's hard.
But we wrote notes and we shared those notes with the new incoming interns, so they knew who we were working with and different issues that we were working on. But it's not the same thing as having a continuation of care. And then also they have a lot. It's just there's a lot to accomplish in that 90 days.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just there for recuperative need of healing themselves physically as well as mentally. And all that time is that they use all that time to heal and not necessarily are able to do all the things that are required to get housed after those 90 days. Because a lot of people need to secure income or either through a job or disability. They have to possibly reunite with family members that they've had difficult relationships with them because of either substance use or trauma. Because if you have done some research on disability, people only get $1,000 a month, and a 1-bedroom apartment goes for $2,500 in San Diego.
Yeah.
So a lot of times to secure shelter, they have to be connected to family because it's just impossible to afford to live in San Diego.
And unfortunately, there are not enough shelter beds. There are not enough housing, even just the short-term housing options. And so let alone the longer-term a housing affordability issue, or just being able to afford an apartment or a home of your own. I was with the manager of our Turk Center last week, and we was touring one of our new board members, and he asked her. He said, "So you have all these individuals here with all these health challenges and everything that the team's trying to help to deal with." He asked her, "What's the biggest challenge that you all have?" And she didn't skip a beat. She said, "Affordable housing." People just don't have an affordable place that they can go to. So for our listeners, this show's about connecting people with the realities of around homelessness and people experiencing homelessness. And it's also about action. It's about identifying actions that people can take. And so we'll reiterate again the importance of creating affordable housing in our communities, and also the importance of creating short-term, whether it's emergency housing or transitional housing, to bridge people out of homelessness while they, to your point, have a lot of work to do to try to build up enough income to actually be able to afford a place to live. So Katie, let's talk about your capstone project. You did this study on the impact of people being able to stay with their pets, the impact of people not being able to stay with their pets, the importance of that relationship among individuals experiencing homelessness when they are in a transitional housing program. So what did you learn, and what would you like to share today?
Well, there were like three main themes because it was a qualitative study.
Okay.
There's three main themes. One of them is that the owners had a really strong bond with their pet. It was probably the strongest relationship they had in their lives, because the pet, or the dog, to be specific, because I only interviewed dog owners, the dog was always there for them, been through everything with them. They were always happy to see the owner, didn't judge them for becoming homeless, and showed them love on an everyday basis. And so this was like the strongest relationship they had in their lives. So people that ended up being separated from their animal suffered a lot of unresolved emotions because they didn't know what their pet was doing, if their pet was okay. And so although it was really fun to talk to people about their pets, it's like one of my favorite topics. It was hard to hear about some of the stories of how they lost ownership of their pet. And then it was clear that the pets were, since it was the strongest relationship in their lives, it was the number one priority. And so as case managers and OTs in that field, it was really important to take into account, because it defined if they were going to accept housing, if the pet could come along. It defined if they were going to get medical care, if someone could watch their pet while they got medical care. So it was a huge influence on their life, was being a pet owner and everything that entailed.
Katie, thank you for sharing on the show, sharing with our listeners. I think for a lot of people, they may initially be surprised to hear that the individual's relationship with their dog is the most important relationship in their life. But then as you unpack that and you shared about why that dog's not judging them for being homeless, that dog is there for them every day, that dog loves them no matter what. I think for me, I think about the really sad reality that most people who are experiencing homelessness, they don't have strong relationships in their life, and they don't have a strong support system for so many different reasons. But they're here, however, for whatever reason, that this is where they are. And I just really appreciate you highlighting this and sharing with us today as we think about why it's so important to create systems of care that can keep people who are unsheltered with their pets.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think of my dog, I would do anything for her. Mm-hmm. And I think most pet owners, even cat owners or other animal owners, love their pets so much that they would do anything for them. And a lot of people in the study, they didn't come by the pet while they were homeless. They came by the pet while they were housed,
Yeah.
and never considered that they would lose housing.
Yeah. Yeah. No one plans on that.
No. And so I think there's like a stigma that somehow people experiencing homelessness are unresponsible pet owners. But I think every person in my study was housed when they had their pet. So they didn't take on an obligation of something they couldn't care for. Or if there was some people that came by their pet because a stray animal was pregnant and they took care of the babies, and then they realized that they wanted to get shelter because they had puppies with them. And so actually the puppies brought them to Interfaith because they wanted to secure housing, because they wanted to provide a better life for their animal, because they considered that more important than even they considered themselves.
And that's sad and unfortunately very common. People we work with who are on the streets have often lost any sense of value about themselves. And when you think about the fact that somebody who has no healthy relationships in their life, no support network, nobody who they feel cares about them or is trying to support them through these challenges, it can be more understandable. And then you add on to that trauma, and then you add on to that the negative impact on mental health that homelessness has, and people lose hope. And it's a sad situation to think about that pet becomes the thing. Okay, well, I don't care about myself, but I care about this little puppy. I want to get housed so I can help this puppy. One of the things that our teams really work on is meeting people where they're at and identifying ways to focus on what is important to them to help them move forward in positive ways. So this would be an example of, helping somebody say, okay, well, let's help get the puppy and you housed, right? Katie, what else did you discover in your study? This is all so important.
Well, what was interesting is that sheltering options need to be pet friendly for them to stay with their pet, but that wasn't the only barrier. A lot of people needed to seek medical help, but they didn't have a caregiver for their pet. So by the time they decided to receive medical help, they were close to death because they didn't seek help, even though they knew they were really sick, because they didn't have a caregiver for their pet. There is one organization that's also called Interfaith in Cincinnati that provides temporary foster care for people experiencing homelessness or need to get medical care. And an organization like that, it's called Found House, and they provide foster care for a pet for people experiencing homelessness or needing to get medical care, so that people can stay united with their pet even if they can't take care of them 24 hours a day.
Yeah, that's a really practical and smart intervention. And I'm glad you're sharing it, because it's something that we'll look into and see if there are any resources like that nearby through local humane societies, or if it's something that we should consider developing similar to the other organization in Cincinnati, like you shared. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and many people in the community would be very happy to provide some short-term foster support for pets while people get medical attention. That's so important.
Yeah, I do. I did notice something on San Diego Humane Society website is that they do have programs that do fostering, but it seems like not that many people know about it. And the people that do know about it have to wait a while because it's based on volunteers. And so sometimes there's not enough volunteers to deal with the demand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, and to do fostering for individuals who are unsheltered is going to take more. It's a different type of program than simply fostering for a housed community, right? Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It's definitely something that we will make sure that our teams look into the existing resources. I'm thinking in particular our homeless outreach teams who are working with individuals who are unsheltered who have pets to identify ways to help people still get the care that they need without having to separate from their pet, or if they do, it's only a temporary pause. What else did you? What else do you want to share about the work that you did on your study?
There was one issue that came up that I wasn't aware of. I worked with one client to get an emotional support animal letter because the requirement at Interfaith to have your pet on site, they have to have certain vaccines, and then they also have to be certified emotional support animal. And most of these pets that are of people experiencing homelessness do qualify for as an emotional support animal, but they may not actually have the letter from the provider to certify the animal that way. In my experience, medical offices had barriers. They either charged an extra fee to get the letter, or they said that the person had to be a long-standing client. And so people that are experiencing homelessness or have or shelter insecurity, they're not going to have a medical provider that's really consistent in their lives because they're probably moving from couch to couch or going to different shelters in different parts of the county, or in this instance, this person showed dedication to their mental health, but she was only at the program for 3 months. So 3 months of the consistent medical care is a huge feat, but the people in the office didn't agree. They wanted her to be like a patient for a year. And I was like, but she needs to be housed with her pet because she's returning to a site where she experienced domestic violence to see her pet. Yeah. And so that pet really needs to be housed with her for not just because she loves the animal, but because it's putting her in danger to visit it.
Sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's a need for a veterinary provider or more veterinary providers to be able to provide those letters certifying that an animal is an emotional support animal.
So it's actually done by the medical doctor.
Oh, okay. So by the individual's medical doctor.
Yeah.
Got it. So working with primary care. Okay.
Yeah, and to be an emotional support animal, it needs to provide support in a way that alleviates a disability. Mm-hmm. But the definition of a disability is that your condition interferes with one or more major life activities. Yeah. And if you look at anyone experiencing homelessness, they have chronic sleep disorders because it's impossible to sleep in an unsafe place like the streets. Yeah. And having a pet helps alert them of danger. So most of these people that live on the streets their animals qualify as emotional support animal, but under the ADA and the Fair Housing Act. But getting that letter is difficult because people are unaware of what the law is, and also just provide barriers to getting it because they think they're going to lose the client if they give them the letter and never see them again.
Yeah. Well, thank you for naming another issue that I think is low-hanging fruit for us to do some work on with our medical providers and with our existing care teams, because I'm certain, given the challenges you described, but the practical realities of why those letters should be granted, we can reach some solutions to make sure that doesn't remain such a barrier for some people. Well, Katie, your study is fascinating, and it's so illuminating of the importance of the bond between pet owners, between people and their pets. And as we look at how many challenges there are for people overcoming homelessness, the importance of keeping people together with their pets and helping overcome some of the challenges that come with that. You were talking about the letters of certification and short needs for short-term foster care. These are things that I think our listeners and Interfaith and our partners can absolutely do some work on. Are there other takeaways that you want to share, either from your research study or from your time as an intern at the Turk Center? You have a unique perspective that I know our listeners would love to learn more from.
Yeah, I think as an occupational therapy intern at the Turk Center, like there were times where I felt like I wanted to help more, but the limits of the setting and the limits of like being a fieldwork student for only 3 months at the site limited how much you could help. And so if they have like a full-time OT, I think that site could really benefit from having a full-time OT, because there would be more continuity in care for people that are there. And then also for the interns that come in, they will be able to see OT in action firsthand. Whereas when we're students there, we get advice and guidance like from our fieldwork educators, but they don't provide OT services at the site.
Yeah.
So as a fieldwork student, I would have loved to see a real OT in action.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're raising the issue, because it's something that we have that we would like to have. And it comes down to budgeting and how you pay for these things. So I think you've highlighted an opportunity that we will continue to look for funding and donations to support, that we can explore with our healthcare partners who provide funding support for the program to address what you're talking about, and to strengthen the continuity of care and just further elevate, because the occupational therapy interns that are there today, right now, make such a tremendous impact, and we would love to build on and leverage that. So thank you for sharing a really practical suggestion on how to do that. Again, this show is about education, but most of all, it's about action. So I appreciate you sharing that suggestion.
Yeah, and I just I loved the staff at that place. It was no one judged the residents. There was no judgment. Even the people with the animals at the site, I felt like they had increased positive interactions, because the residents greeted the animals, and it became more of like a family environment that I think some make it difficult for some people to leave, because it's really a safe haven for that population, and the staff is wonderful, and the residents really are working hard, but there's only so much you can accomplish in 90 days.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the compliments to our team. They work so hard and they dedicate their careers to this work. And I appreciate you being a part of the work as an occupational therapy intern last year. I'm excited for what you'll do in your career ahead. And thank you, Katie, for coming on our show today.
Oh, you're welcome.
To our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about the Recuperative Care Center, about the Turk Center, as we call the location, we'd love to have you come out and visit the site. We can set up a tour and walk you through what we do there. Volunteers are critical to addressing a lot of the occupational therapy needs that you talked about, in terms of helping support occupational therapy interns, teaching healthy life skills, volunteers supporting the daily operations of the site. And then, of course, there are individuals who are called, like you, to do this work for a living. And we are always looking for individuals who have certifications to do this work as resident behavioral health aides, as case managers, licensed clinical social workers, and thanks to your advice, if we can get the funding for it, for occupational therapy there at the Turk Center. So, Katie, thank you so much for helping educate and share with our listeners today. Anything else that you want to share before we wrap up our episode?
I don't know. I was just really pleasantly surprised when I was a fieldwork student at just how well everyone worked together to help these people like accomplish goals that could help them secure housing. But there are so many barriers to secure housing that like there's only so much you can do because we can't necessarily make San Diego more affordable. Like I guess if your call to action is like support affordable housing in your neighborhood, because Lisa Halverstadt, that covers this topic for the Voice of San Diego, she's been tracking, and she reported that the length of stay at these shelters is increasing because there's no place to go after you end up in the shelter because housing is so unaffordable. And so just supporting local projects that include affordable housing are really important, because pretty soon if San Diego's rent keeps going up, pretty much no one except for millionaires are going to be able to afford to live here.
It's a wonderful way to end the episode. It's a sobering way to end the episode. But again, housing affordability is at the core of all of this. So, Katie, thank you for highlighting that. Thank you for who you are. Congratulations on your graduation. Can I call you Dr. Holden?
Well, there's it's kind of complicated. Most OTs don't like to be called doctors,
All right,
especially if they work in a mental health setting, because how we treat people is different than how the medical model treats people. So we try to separate ourselves from being called doctor, but it's kind of cool.
All right. Well, I will call you Dr. Holden today. Appreciate your expertise and your leadership. Thank you for being with us.
Okay. Thank you.